The next two verses are spoken by Mahamati. Mahamati is addressing the Buddha. Verse 679. Pray tell me, O Lord, about the truth in order to check dualistic views, so that I and others may not cherish the dualism of being and non-being. So this is what we've been concerned about in recent verses. Dualistic views is the ordinary understanding that we have. It's the understanding of a me here experiencing an external world out there. And that external world has got things in it, other entities. And we relate to this world in certain ways. And these ways are to do with cherishing the dualism of being and non-being. And it's not so easy to relate to this kind of language. We need to look really deeply at what this is. In what way are we cherishing being and non-being? Well, in recent verses we've been talking about existence and non-existence. And this is something which has been looked into, what this means. And what this means on a very personal and intimate level. It's to do with our relationship with this so-called external world. And when I say the world, this is primarily the world of human beings. We have basic survival mechanisms. We need to get by somehow. Although we don't need to worry about that in the first few years of life. But at some point, they have to take on responsibility for their own survival. So this kick-starts certain feelings, certain attitudes, certain thoughts. And these thoughts will fuel the feelings and attitudes and so on. And depending on the extent to which we grow as human beings, we're still driven by these attitudes of insecurity and so on. The writer Charles Dickens has just popped into my mind. If I remember correctly, he was terrified of poverty. I think his parents or his father, I think part of his childhood was in the workhouse, which was a kind of debtor's prison. So this was something that hung over Dickens all of his life, even though he became very wealthy, very famous. So this sets up a certain tone, a certain emotional tone. In what way is it to do with being and not being? Well, there's different ways we can look into it. We can regard the world as something which is always there. It's something that we come into for a short period of time and then disappear from at some point. So this is being or eternalism. And it might tie in with a certain attitude that the individual continues as well in some form or another. Perhaps the individual is reborn or recycled somehow. Non-being perhaps relates more to the individual, the idea that at the end of this life, that's it altogether. That there's some kind of nothingness. And this is fueled by a certain scientific understanding about space being cold and empty, which of course it is, but it's somehow seen that that is the de facto state. The universe has a natural tendency to be cold and desolate. So this is nihilism, this is non-being. This is cherishing the idea of non-being. That somehow, at some point, you're going to be extinguished. Well, you as a particular identity will be. You as an individual with a particular history will be extinguished. But this happens every night anyway, when you enter into your dreams. Who you were in your daytime life may or may not have relevance to who you are in your dream life. It could be anything, anybody. Who you were in your daytime is by and large completely forgotten. And this identity that you think is a fixed, which you think is affixed to you, which you think is a defined, clear entity, is changing all the time anyway. You just need to look in the mirror. And your values, your thoughts, your impressions, your opinions can change as well. So who are you? It's just an idea that you've got about yourself as some sort of fixed entity that you're clinging on to. But this idea has got no basis in reality because you're changing all the time. But there is something in you which is changeless. But it's got nothing to do with you as a particular identity. And this is part of the truth that we can realize in order to check dualistic views. This inherent, essential you, which transcends any egoistic identity, it's the awareness that is hearing this. It's not concerned with being and non-being. On a more immediate level, we can understand being and non-being as relating to what I have and what I don't have. On a more immediate practical level, perhaps we can relate to being and non-being in these terms. This is what drives us. We're driven to acquire what we don't have. So this is being driven by non-being. This is cherishing non-being. And we're driven by satisfaction also by what we do have, by our current situation. So this is being. This is what drives us. We're never quite satisfied. Are you looking for something that you haven't got at the moment? Are you trying to get enlightened? Well, this is cherishing non-being. Or perhaps you're dissatisfied with yourself. You want to be a better person. You feel you need to change. Well, this is cherishing being. So this might be an interesting exercise. In what way do we cherish being and non-being? So we need to be careful when we get caught up in so-called spirituality that we're not cherishing being and non-being. And in a way, this is what the next verse is about, verse 680. And thus we may keep ourselves away from the philosophers' teachings and also from the Sravakas and Pratyekabuddhas. For it behoves the Bodhisattvas not to lose the life of enlightenment as realized by the Buddhas. So the life of enlightenment is our spiritual practice. It's enlightenment practice. So we keep ourselves away from the philosophers' teachings. And the philosophers' teachings, they assume the existence of a world and an individual, and they are thoughts about the world. Philosophers think about the world. Spiritual practitioner goes beyond the world. And as I said in the previous video, I think, or recent video, The truth is simple. The truth is simple. If things start getting too complicated, then we're wandering away from the truth. It's not that we have to get our head around the truth, but that we get the truth around our head. We have to get around our head to get to the truth. So we don't get to the truth through our heads, but by going around it. We bypass it. We bypass our minds. So that's the philosophers teach us, but we also keep ourselves away from the Sravakas and Pratyekabuddhas. And the Sravakas, well, in this context, are Buddhists. A lot of people like Buddhists, and Buddhists are often given talks about how to be happy. And I don't quite know what the appeal of such talks is, unless you're prepared to go and be a Buddhist, go and don the yellow robes or whatever. I'd much rather hear from somebody who's got a job and a family about how to be happy. You know, somebody who's right in the thick of it. So the underlying message of any Buddhist who's telling us how to be happy is, come and be a Buddhist. And that might be the thing to do, although I don't particularly subscribe to that myself. So we keep away from the Sravakas, we keep away from Buddhists and official spiritual types and Pratyekabuddhas. Well, you probably have a bit of trouble getting close to a Pratyekabuddha because they keep themselves to themselves. They are coursing in their spiritual practice. They're getting into some very nice spaces, nice meditative states, what we might call higher states of consciousness. So we'll just let them get on with that. We as enlightenment practitioners do not lose the life of enlightenment. And we'll get the Buddha's response to Muhammad's request about the truth in the next verse.